Palestinian authorities say that one person has died during a riot by Israeli settlers in the West Bank. They say a group of settlers set fire to cars and some 30 homes. That was just hours after a Palestinian gunman shot and killed 2 settlers on Sunday. The attacks are part of worsening violence in the region and happened as Israeli and Palestinian officials met in Jordan to de-escalate tension.
Calls for calm did not last long in the West Bank. Just hours after 2 Israeli brothers were shot dead in their car, scores of Israeli settlers began rioting near the town of Hawara, apparently in response to the killings, which Israeli officials described as a Palestinian terror attack. The rioters began burning Palestinian homes, cars and businesses.
What's happening is the burning of an entire village. This is what they do. Dozens of shops and houses were broken and burned. These were safe houses, and they were destroyed by about 400 to 500 settlers with people from the army for their protection.
Palestinian officials say 1 man was shot dead by Israeli fire and 4 more were badly injured. Nearly 100 others were treated for tear gas inhalation. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned what he called terrorist acts carried out by settlers under the protection of the occupation forces. Israel's Prime Minister has called for calm.
I ask, even when the blood is boiling, not to take the law into one's hands. I ask that the Israeli Defense Forces and the security forces be allowed to carry out their work.
About 2.9 million Palestinians live in the West Bank and around 475,000 Jewish settlers, many of whom hold hardline views. Since the start of this year, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has claimed the lives of 63 Palestinians and 11 Israeli civilians. Talks to stop the intensifying violence took place in Jordan over the weekend. While both sides made promises for peace, the meeting failed to calm tensions, which are now higher than they've been in years.
And let's bring in correspondent Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Rebecca, tell us more about what happened.
Well, Sarah, this is really some of the worst settler violence that we've seen here in many years, some saying since the end of the Second Intifada some 2 decades ago. As we heard in that report, in an apparent revenge attack for the killing of 2 Israeli settlers yesterday in the West Bank near this town of Hawara, there was a call put out on social media for settlers to get out and avenge that killing. That call was responded to, and we saw settlers then going into this town, Hawara. It is a bit of a flashpoint in the northern West Bank and often the scene of settler violence. We saw them going in there, torching Palestinian homes, businesses. One home had a family in it. The IDF had to, the Israeli Defense Forces had to evacuate that family out of the burning house. We've seen dozens of cars burned, and 1 Palestinian was also shot and killed during that attack. The scenes were so shocking, in fact, that one Israeli security official who wouldn't be named told local media here that he called the events of last night a pogrom, and that's a word that's being echoed here on local media. It really gives you the indication of the scale and severity of this attack, and this comes on the backdrop of what has already been one of the most violent years in recent decades. We've seen some 60 Palestinians this year alone killed, and also 13 Israelis, 7 of which were killed in that synagogue shooting towards the end of last month. So we're seeing the tensions really ratcheting up here, very serious fears that things could well spiral out of control.
What do both sides have to say? There's been more reaction.
Yeah, of course, there's been the usual international condemnation. The US, the UK and the like. Palestinians have come out both in the West Bank and in Gaza, both the Palestinian Authority and Hamas coming out condemning these actions, as you might expect. Although we haven't seen anything more concrete coming from the Palestinians so far. Hamas have instead been criticising the Palestinian Authority for taking part in that summit yesterday that was mentioned in that report in Aqaba to try and ease tensions. But last night we heard Benjamin Netanyahu calling on the settlers or calling for people not to take matters into their own hands, to allow it to be taken care of by the security forces. We haven't heard that much so far from the more right factions of the coalition. I'm speaking particularly of Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, the Finance Minister, both settlers themselves, both calling in the past for annexation of the West Bank. Nothing official coming from them, but other members of their party definitely coming out in support of the actions last night. Quite alarming, quite surprising. A prominent member of that coalition, the chairman of the National Security Committee, actually has come out in support, in fact saying that it has more of a deterrence effect than we've seen in the West Bank in the last 2 decades. So this kind of ratcheting up of tensions, certainly a concern here. Everyone wondering where this is headed.
Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem, thank you.